Hey everybody, Douglas Blair Roberts, the Mr. the Fanboy, the Super Vader 400, the brown skinned human, and coming back at you with another video rant series. And this time, this is a brand new spanking remade worst list. These are my worst. This is a brand new spanking worst list. These are my top 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 worst things of all time. Worst things. That's cartoons. That's cartoons, movies, comics, comics. Not really animes, but yeah, wrestlers, characters, etc. Worst of everything. And a remake, because worst movies and worst comic book movies I've already done. This is a brand new spanking remade version. So, with that being said, let's go back in time and rant on the past and present things from my childhood and recently that pissed me off, or some things that I actually enjoy but consider them to be the worst ever, have earned their spot as the worst movie, comic, etc., whatever product, whatever. So, with that being said, let's get started right now.
Of all the reasons, but it's still not clear. So many places to go, there's nothing here. So let's get away from this, 'cause this place will hardly miss. So take me back in time to another world where we feel alive. We don't have to worry when the fire's bright. There's nothing I don't know, there's nothing to define, apart from where we want to go. Let me show you who I am, what I'm here for. Here for. Hey, trying to reach inside of me, trying to get my energy. Let me show you just what I'm made of. Trying to get your mind on me. Let me show you just what I'm made of now.
It's time for the larger webcam portion on my rant on the Amazing Spider-Man movie characters. I've done just about every single Amazing Spider-Man 2 film Amazing Spider-Man film rant, Amazing Spider-Man films, movies rant I can think of. But finally, it's time for a new type of video, and this one's attacking the characters. This is attacking the characters because one thing I can't stand, I can't stand Amazing Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man film fanboys, and especially defenders who say they got it right when they clearly did it, who say they got these characters right and did these characters justice. This is the larger webcam version. To see the shorter narration version on my Doug A798 channel, the link will be in the description box below. With that being said, let's get started right now. So yes, the Amazing Spider-Man. We're going to start off with quote-unquote Peter Parker. Peter Parker is in my opinion, he's the worst one and the biggest inaccurate representation of his character. I mean, he might not be the biggest inaccurate, but he's the worst one, because Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker ruins anything that's good about those movies. Anything that's good about those movies. And I wish people stop with the bullshit, stop with the BS that Andrew Garfield did a good job, that it was the studio who failed him. No, it was Andrew Garfield and the studio that failed the movies, man. And it was those two. It was Andrew Garfield, Mark Webb, and Sony who fucked up Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 2. There, I fixed it for you. Andrew Garfield is humble now and is talking about doing the character justice now, because myself and the real Spider-Man fans have bashed and gave him hell for his horrible portrayal of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in both Amazing Spider-Man 2012 and quote-unquote 2. Before that, everyone say he was a huge Spider-Man fan. He was a huge Spider-Man fan. No, he wasn't. He was a pretentious douchebag who kept trying to turn Peter Parker, Spider-Man, into what he wanted, into what he and the studio wanted. And he saw with his portrayal in those two films, he saw no problems, no flaws with them until after both of those films were released, and both of those films got bashed and ragged on by a lot of people, including real fans. Real fans. So yeah, so stop with the bullshit. Stop with the bullshit. Andrew Garfield. Peter Parker's supposed to be, in both versions, supposed to be a nerd, a quiet, humble outsider. Now he doesn't have to be goofy. He doesn't have to be goofy and dorky like Tobey Maguire. Peter Parker in no version of the story was like Tobey Maguire. Was as goofy and as dorky as Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire, man. So yeah, he doesn't have to be that. He doesn't have to be Tobey Maguire, but he must be quote unquote a nerd and a quiet, humble outsider. This try-hard wannabe edgelord, wannabe bad boy, street smart. I don't remember Peter Parker ever being that. Street smart, cocky, show off, and asshole, skateboarding hipster is not who Peter Parker is. It is not who Peter Parker is and never will be. They try to turn Peter Parker into a product of what is out today. Yeah, that is not quote unquote Peter Parker. That is quote unquote not Peter Parker. And that's the biggest issue with the Amazing Spider-Man. So when it comes to what y'all get the characters right. If they would have got the story and everything else wrong, but you at least got the characters and maintained who they were, and got actors and actresses capable of giving them the performance they deserve, I would have forgave every terrible thing about those movies, man. Every actor and actress in The Amazing Spider-Man was horribly miscast for their role, and you have people like Garfield who were just atrocious. And Andrew Garfield, people like to say he's a great actor. He is terrible in everything I see him in, and the Amazing Spider-Man was his worst. He is terrible. He is terrible in just about everything. That Social Network, that with Eisenberg, Lex Luthor from the DCEU, he was atrocious in that too. Boy, he was at least better in that than he was in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. So yeah, what else about the Amazing Spider-Man movies? Yeah, Garfield. Yeah, Garfield. Garfield. He did a bunch of things in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 to make me hate his character. But the two biggest things he did to make me hate his character, that are complete opposite of what Peter would do, because they're not in any version of Spider-Man. And that was number one in the first one. Peter Parker, this asshole stole someone's intern badge, stole an intern's badge, then laughed and mocked as he is comically dragged out, and throughout the entire film, you see him apologizing and talking to a lot of people. You see him apologizing and talking to everyone but the guy whose badge you stole, and mocked and laughed as he was dragged out of the Oscorp building. That is not quote unquote Peter Parker. But that's what they wanted. They wanted a bad boy. They wanted a quote unquote bad boy for the ladies. They wanted those Twilight people in there. Quote unquote Twilight people in there. You want to make a film about a cool, try-hard bad guy, you should have left Spider-Man alone. Spider-Man, quote unquote, alone. And if you people out there have such a problem, the only reason you SOBs, Andrew Garfield defenders like Garfield, because he was a less nerdy version of Peter Parker. You hate the nerdy version of Peter Parker? Oh, you need to find a different hero, because that's who Peter Parker is, man. That's who Peter Parker is and was before he got his powers, man. Now, yeah, when he got older, he became less of a pushover. But still, if you're going to be adapting Spider-Man, especially the high school stuff, that's what we need to see. And if you have a problem with that, you need to pick a different hero. Sick of you try-hard edgelords. Yeah. And there were multiple moments like that, but that was the exact worst right there. Next, the next one was in the second Spider-Man film. This I don't tolerate at all, because this is not in any comic book or any form of source material, because this is a ripoff of Star Trek Into Darkness. Harry needs Spider-Man's blood to save his life, as Harry is dying from a hereditary disease. So, Harry deduces that Peter must know Spider-Man, because Spider-Man takes his quote unquote pictures. Peter promises Harry he'll talk to Spider-Man for him. Peter gets dressed up in the Spider-Man costume just to come in to be a dick and refuse him. Parker would never do that, especially to what was supposed to be his best friend, Harry Osborn. There is a world of research. And the best scientists in the world, the scientists and doctors in the world, to deduce what Harry Osborn's illness was. And people defended this by saying there was no saving Harry. Then There was no saving. There was no quote unquote saving Harry. How do we know that? We don't know anything about their disease. Oh, that's right, because you threw because you just randomly inserted the Osborns here. If you were gonna do this crappy disease and Osborn storyline, they should have been part of the first. Those two should have been part of the first one to better set up their appearance and their disease and their plot here. In their plot, here, but no, the plot comes out of nowhere, which means you have so many holes, you have so many holes and inconsistencies. And guess what? I don't accept this at all. I don't entertain this at all, because this is not the comic books. This is not the comic books. In both versions of the story, both were different, but Harry Osborn swore vengeance. Harry Osborn swore vengeance on Peter Parker and Spider-Man after Norman Osborn was impaled by the glider, got killed by Peter Parker and Spider-Man accidentally, and Harry Osborn swore vengeance. That's the story. It's slightly different in both versions, the Ultimate and the Amazing, but that's the storyline. This Blood is a ripoff of Star Trek Into Darkness, which I haven't watched yet, but I read the script online. I read part of the script online, so it is there. And Red Letter Media brought it up during their hilarious rant and roast of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2, like I said, this was Croc. This was quote unquote. I'm not even entertaining quote unquote this. But if I were to entertain it, I brought up the other ones. How Harry Osborn and Norman should have been part of part one. But Peter would never do what we just saw. Peter would never do what we just saw right there. He would never promise someone something, then show up later just to refuse them. These are the two incidents why I forever despise Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Spider-Man. The worst and most offensive portrayal, most annoying portrayal of a superhero on screen. Probably the worst portrayal of a superhero on screen is Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, man. So, yeah. Then going back to him being a cocky show off. Instead of him doing cheesy basketball stunts with Flash, where the idiot broke the goalpost. Yeah, Spider-Man is supposed to be a show off, not Parker. When Peter Parker has the suit and mask on, he portrays a different personality. So no one would ever suspect that Parker is Spider-Man. Here, why does he even have a secret identity in this universe? He's the same with the mask on and with the mask off. He has terrible quips and terrible jokes with the mask on and mask off, and people will be like, whoa, his Spider-Man has quips, and people say, Andrew Garfield, his Spider-Man was weak. His Peter Parker was weak, but at least his Spider-Man was good. No. His Spider-Man was weak. His Spider-Man, I guess it is slightly better than his Peter Parker, but his Spider-Man was a parody of Spider-Man, not actual Spider-Man. He says he has quips, but he does them in inappropriate times. Times when he should be saving lives and taking things seriously. We got a violent electric blue man in the city. Unstable electric blue man in the city, and Peter Parker is thinking about quote unquote every one-liner he could quote unquote think of. Then later during the fight with quote unquote Electro, he takes the time out of dodging Electro's attacks to stop dodging Electro's attacks to bring up the fact how much he hates this song and that horrible God named Sparkles line, which causes him to get caught by Electro and nearly electrocuted to death, nearly electrocuted, quote unquote, to death, electrocuted to death. Which brings to another fact: is Peter Parker Spider-Man? They tried hard to make him cool, to make him a badass, to make him a quote unquote badass, but they created an even bigger pussy. He needed Gwen to do he needed Gwen or backup from anyone to do everything. Do quote unquote everything. So he's a pussy. Yeah, he's a pussy. Yeah, he's a pussy. So that was Peter Parker. So that was Peter Parker. There's more, but I'm gonna leave it there for gonna leave it there. Like I said, nothing like Peter Parker or Spider-Man. Just a try-hard edgelord, cocky show-off. Try-hard edgelord, cocky show-off skateboarding. Skateboarding hipster wannabe bad boy. Wannabe bad boy. Nothing like Peter Parker. Next is Gwen Stacy. Ooh, yes. Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy. Emma Stone's a great actress, and she was a great actress. She's a great actress, but she was not good here, and she was horribly miscast as Gwen Stacy. She got the role because she looked like the character. Same with Garfield. I forgot to mention that. I'm going to mention that right now. Garfield, he did nothing to earn the role of Spider-Man. The people he tried out with were way better than him. He won the role because he resembled the character the closest visually. He did nothing acting wise, stunt wise, or anything to quote unquote earn the role of Peter Parker or Spider-Man. The worst Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and superhero actor of all time is Andrew Garfield. Then you got Emma Stone. Let's bring Emma Stone back. Let's get back to Emma Stone. Emma Stone was the same way. Emma Stone, but it's also not Emma Stone's fault entirely because it's mostly the writers changing the characters up to where they're not supposed to be. Emma Stone was just supposed to be Peter Parker's classmate. She's not a intern or lab assistant at Oscorp. And another problem I had, she doesn't know. Gwen Stacy did not know Peter Parker's secret identity as Spider-Man, and she damn sure was not involved on any of his adventures, and this involved and this important to the storyline. And people like to try to say, well, this film made Gwen more useful. No, they didn't. All you did was create an even more useless, overpowered Mari Sue. Yes, she was an overpowered Mari Sue. She had a weapon for everything, and she knew how to get out of everything, and she was more of a hero, more of a champion than Peter Parker was. Peter Parker was. You should call it the Amazing Gwen Stacy. Amazing Gwen Stacy. I'm sorry. I'm here to see Peter Parker Spider-Man. Peter Parker Spider-Man. You have a problem with Gwen Stacy being a damsel in distress? Fine. Go create a Spider-Gwen or any form of female superhero movie. But in Spider-Man, I want to see Spider-Man kick butt. And for those of you out there, Gwen Stacy, yeah, she's not a superhero like Peter Parker Spider-Man. But outside of Peter Parker's life, she still had her own life. So get the hell out of here with that more useful crap. Then what I meant by more useless, and then people try to say, well, she was at least more likable than Kirsten Dunst. As Mary Jane. No, she wasn't. She gave Peter Parker a hard time just because the one time Andrew Garfield was doing the right thing Gwen Stacy's dad told Peter to keep her out of danger, and Peter Parker was just for once doing what he was supposed to be doing. Gwen gave him a hard time, screamed at him, and broke up with him. So no, she's an asshole and a slave driver too.
She's an asshole. She wasn't more likable. Then last but not least, the useless part. Useless part. Her whole existence was in this universe was just to die and set up the next lead as Mary Jane, who was supposed to be in the film. Oh wait, but you already had too many characters. Too many characters. The film already had too many characters, so you had to cut her out of the film. So so all those about Gwen Stacy being more useful, being more useful, and all that, and being an improvement to her comic counterpart. Well, she wasn't. She was even more useless. Mari Sue. They tried hard to make her more involved in the story, to make her more important than she really needed to be. They created a character who was even more. But useless and overpowered, overrated Mari Sue. Overrated Mari Sue. So yeah, fuck out of here. Fuck out of here with that, man. Fuck out of here. That bad enough you like and defend it, but then you try to defend it. By attacking the original, attacking the quote unquote original. So yeah, your movie sucks, man. What's after Gwen Stacy? So yeah, that was Gwen Stacy. Yes, now it's time for now it's time for Aunt May and Uncle Ben. This will be quick. Let's start off with Uncle Ben. His death right here. His death in the Spider-Man. Uncle Ben was preachy and pretentious, and his death here was more comical than emotional, like it was in the 2002 version. He freaking launches at a guy and gets shot, and is forgotten for the rest of the series, for the rest of the Amazing Spider-Man series. Then you got who's after Uncle Ben? Oh yeah, then you got Aunt May. Aunt May is a nothing factor in both of these movies. You can remove. She's only here because Peter Parker has an Aunt May and an Uncle Ben. You can remove Aunt May from the storyline, and the movies would not be different. Especially the second one, where her plot in becoming a nurse. You can cut all that out, all of her scenes out, and the movie would not be any different. Not only not be different, you'd have a better movie. You'd have a quote unquote better movie. And even Sally Field didn't like her role as Aunt May, didn't like the movie, and didn't like being in this movie, and even voiced her displeasure and disapproval of these movies. So yeah. Then you got who's after Aunt May? Oh yeah, you got we got the bad guys. Lizard. Firstly, Lizard, his actor had a British accent, which was noticeable and harmed his performance. Usually, hiring Brits to play Americans is not a bad thing. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad thing or a bad idea. But here and in Venom, with Tom Hardy, his accent was noticeable and harmed his portrayal and performance, and quote unquote performance. So happy that in No Way Home they limited his dialogue. He didn't talk a lot in No Way Home, but here he got a lot of dialogue, and boy was it annoying. First he goes from sympathetic, and then later to maniacal supervillain bullshit, which was even worse. And then even when he becomes the Lizard character, he still has that annoying voice. And then here he was just a scientist with the stumpy arm who wanted to make the stumpy arm go away. So what does he do? He keeps injecting it, and then he decides that everyone should become lizards, but his lizard serum isn't permanent, so everyone will just become lizards, then eventually turn back to quote unquote normal. And people try to say, oh well, he wanted to turn people into lizards. That was in the comic books. That was in the quote unquote comic books. That was in the quote unquote comic books. No, that was in the quote unquote comic books. it was in the comic books, but it was more complex in the comic book universe than what was here. In the comic book universe, it was similar to William Dafoe's Green Goblin. It was a Jekyll and Hyde thing. It was, you had the polite and good guy, Kurt Connors, versus the dark lizard persona, and the savage dark lizard persona took over and decided the lizard should be the dominant species, and then decided to turn everyone into lizards. See, that is a genius and brilliantly written plot. This Amazing Spider-Man film was terrible. That's another thing these films do. They take stuff from the comics and they just insert it into the film because the comic books have it, and because fanboys and fangirls will recognize it and go to these movies, not go to the and quote unquote go to these and fall for it and go to these movies. So yeah, park that right there. So yeah, that's the freaking lizard. Then you got who's after Lizard Man? Who's after the stupid Lizard Man? Oh yeah. Rhino used to be my number one reason for protesting this film. You know how excited I was to hear that the Rhino will be making his cinematic debut. And I see Paul Giamatti in the trailers turn into a Rhinozord. With that being said, I wanted this movie to fail, and I got my own wish. Rhino in the original is similar to the Incredible Hulk. It is a being similar to the Incredible Hulk and Juggernaut, a big man in a rhino suit, a big man in a rhino suit. That was hard to write, and people just say, "Oh, that would look ridiculous." But Paul Giamatti in a Rhinozord isn't ridiculous at all. And what is supposed to be a movie series. And then you got a Rhino Man anyway in a movie series that tries to be like Nolan's Batman. I can't believe I'm about to defend Nolan's Batmans, but there's a reason Mr. Freeze and Man-Bat and Killer Croc do not appear in those universes. Do not appear in that universe. Imbeciles. So yeah, quoting Trilby right there. But going back to Spider-Man. So yeah, Rhino. They got another version right now. In the Ultimate version, he is a guy in a robot suit, except his robot suit is a giant exoskeleton. In armor called Rhino. Rhino. He has a connection to Tony Stark and the military in that universe. That also was not here. They just got the man in a robot suit part. That's the only part I have in common. They didn't even get the right robot suit, which has a giant exoskeleton similar to RoboCop and Iron Man or Iron Man's bad guys like Titanium Man and Ironmonger. This was a giant Megazord and Mecha suit. So they still didn't get it right. They just got the part about a giant man in a robot suit. And people just say, "Oh, well, the Rhino's an idiotic character." That shows you never read comics. The comic books have made Rhino an interesting character on numerous occasions. He's been a hero, an anti-hero, He's even won on one occasion. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. If you're not gonna try or write characters, they shouldn't be in the film. Then his only purpose here was to set up a bunch of Sinister Six film that's not happening right now. That's quote unquote not happening. And then it was also the Sinister Six stuff and the spin-offs, the sequels and spin-offs. These idiots can't even get the Peter Gwyn and the rest of the Spider-Man source material right. They have the audacity to announce a sequel spin-off in Sinister Six stuff, and they can't even get what you call it. I was offended, and I enjoyed the Spider-Man. To this day, I've done everything in my power to stop those movies from ever seeing the light. Yeah, seeing the light. So seeing the light. So yeah. You can remove Rhino from the film, and the film would not be any different. So yeah, then we got the next two villains, Electro and Harry Osborn, who are the real two main antagonists of the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. Of Amazing Spider-Man 2. We got Maxwell Dillon. Jamie Foxx was gave a phenomenal performance, but the character was weak, and the writers gave him nothing to work with. Jamie Foxx, Electro in the comic books, Electro in the comic books, especially the American comic books, Electro has never, ever been a sympathetic character. Electro, since his introduction, his purpose and ever since he got his power, from then on, he decided he was going to rob banks. He's the antithesis of what Peter Parker and Spider-Man was. You got Spider-Man who understands with great power comes great responsibility. Well, Electro is the exact opposite of that. When you have power, why protect the innocent? When you can basically have anything you want, you can live like a god. And that's Electro. When he got the power, he gained a superiority complex where he decided he was gonna walk all over everyone else. So this whole bull crap about him being a nobody his whole life, and then his story is so stupid. If you see the position Electro works at, the job he works at, you will never bully someone like this, especially to their face. They have such a certain important and dangerous job. Somebody has to do that job. What if he decides, I quit and I'm not doing this job? You cannot bully, and you do not bully someone like that. That's why it's complete bull. And then you want to be sympathetic, you got to develop it. And they were trying to do that. Oh, but wait, that had to be dropped. It had to be rushed and dropped in favor for the crappy Harry Osborn stuff at the end. But before we get to that, then he falls into a water tank full of electric eels, gets electrocuted by him, and explodes and somehow survives that, and boom, becomes Electric Blue Man. In the original comics, 2012, in the Amazing version, it was realistic. And actually in both versions, it was realistic. In the first one, he got electrocuted. He got electrocuted, hospitalized, and woke up with electric powers. And then from then on, after accidentally killing the man, then rejecting Magneto's offer to join his Brotherhood of Mutants, decided to go on his own crime spree, and that led him into confrontation with Spider-Man. Ultimate Electro was the result of a electrical chemical experiment that turned him into the yellow and blue man you see in the film. And after getting these powers, went on a crime spree. I think joining the Sinister Six here, and this led him into confrontation with Spider-Man. So once again, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. He's never been a sympathetic character. Then he becomes evil because Spider-Man supposedly stole the spotlight for him. Then you have one idiot try to defend it by saying he thinks Spider-Man not only stole the spotlight for him, spotlight he never had. He saw himself on screen for 10 minutes and he thought he was famous. Psychopaths, criminals. I stole this from another YouTuber named Nick Smith. I think that's his name. Psychopaths, criminals, pedophiles, and child predators, and many more despicable people are seen on television all the time. Does that mean they're respected? No, you can't be robbed of something you never had. Then they try to say, oh well, Spider-Man set him up. Electro's the one who came in the city feeding on electricity, and the cop just shot him. Peter Parker, Spider-Man had nothing to do with that right there. Like I said, it was forced to try to get Electro to be evil and for him to fight Spider-Man instead of just following the comic books, man. Yeah, you don't gotta follow the comic books, but when your storylines are this bad, you need to follow the comic books, man. What's after this? And and he later gets brutally murdered by Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, which I've also got to mention. When he finally captured Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy came out of nowhere and somehow managed to hit him with her car, then power a grid. She was able to turn and power a grid by herself and electrically overload and kill and brutally murder Electro. And they never thought twice. They never thought twice about that. Twice about that. So that was that garbage right there. Then we got the next film. Then we got the next bad guy, Harry Osborn. Harry Osborn. We didn't see or hear about Harry Osborn in part 1. All of a sudden in part 2 he's Peter Parker's best friend. You're not best friends. And they try to use this, oh, we were best friends when we were kids, but then I got sent away to boarding school for several years. You're not best friends. You're not best friends. You haven't seen each other in several years. Then they're 20 looking back. They're 20 looking back on their single digit years, but they talk like they're 30 looking back on their high school years. Like I said, just trash, man. And the dialogue between them was garbage, man. Then then I already mentioned earlier. I already mentioned how the there's a world worth of science, and Harry Osborn's character, the Magic Blood. I don't even entertain it because that's not the storyline. That's not the storyline. But if you're gonna use that crappy storyline, he should have been part of the first one to set up his appearance here. End of story. But I'm not accepting that at all because that's not the storyline. That's not the storyline. And Sam Raimi got it right. So since Sam Raimi trilogy got the Harry Osborn and Peter Parker relationship right, I am not accepting Sony Amazing Spider-Man film series getting it wrong. So yeah. So there was that, and then you got what's after Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. I mean, what's after that? So yeah, that's everyone. Everyone in the Amazing Spider-Man was terrible. If you only have decent characters, being Electro, who was poorly utilized, and Dennis Leary's Captain Stacy. These were only two phenomenal actors here. Everyone else was horribly miscast or just atrocious, just like Andrew Garfield. So this is The Amazing Spider-Man. Why the Amazing Spider-Man 2 characters suck. And I'll forgive all of this if you at least got the characters right, especially Andrew Garfield's, who he kills anything that is good about these films. Yeah, the worst portrayal of a superhero and the worst superhero actor of all time is Andrew Garfield. I don't think he will ever be topped. So, yeah, this has been my rant on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Turn the video off now if you don't want to hear the rest of the music. There'll be no outro walk for me. Just the music playing in the background.
Like a million faces, I recognize them all. And one by one they all go number as they fall. In the face of reason, I can't take no more. One by one they all go like monks on the floor. Is it me you say you're looking for? Let me show you who I am and what I
Beautiful.
You can't take